Okay.
The Senate will please come to order, and Senator Starr will please get off his phone.
These new legislatures.
Senator from Chittenden Central.
What are our rules around cell phones?
I believe folks understand that there is to be no use of electronic devices on the floor of the Senate.
Thank you very much.
We were not in session until the bang of the gavel, however. And then it was just fun. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, order of the day. Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering if we could take up S-138, an act relating to school safety.
Without objection, the first order on the calendar that is within order without any special votes to be taken up will be S-138. S-138 was sent to the House, which considers the same and recommends that with the proposal of amendment, return the bill. I believe there is an amendment being offered, and it will be handed out now, and I'll recognize the senator from Windham, Senator Hashim.
Mr. President, S-138 is a school safety bill that your Senate Education Committee voted out earlier during the session, and I believe it's located on page 3193 of today's calendar. And I just want to make sure I say the magic words for the procedure here. So may I speak to the proposal of amendment from the other chamber and the proposal of amendment that's coming from myself?
And just to be clear for you and others, when doing an amendment in this situation, you actually have the floor to speak about both. You don't even have to ask.
Thank you. So in section 1, we previously discussed options-based response drills. That policy is still included here, but there is additional language to make sure that drills are age appropriate and that notification is provided to the parents. In section 4, the policy has become more in-depth regarding the threat assessment teams. While the new policy mandates these teams, we also heard earlier that many schools are doing these threat assessments anyways, but there are currently little to no guidelines or guardrails. The new proposal requires data collection before full implementation of the assessment teams in 2025, and the purpose of the teams is to identify severe and significant threats and determine if law enforcement will become involved. The current policy does not add law enforcement to these teams, nor does it place more police in schools. There's also a requirement for additional training under subsection D, covering areas such as bias, disability, protecting civil rights, and trauma-informed practices. And additionally, there are reporting requirements that provide details to the Agency of Education regarding things such as the description of behavior, demographics, disciplinary data, and whether law enforcement was involved. There was also an amendment that I proposed to the committee, which was approved by a vote of 4-1-0. We've previously heard a lot of conversation about the issues regarding the severe or pervasive standard as it relates to harassment and discrimination in our schools. There were previous attempts and discussions to remove this standard, and because we are removing it for teachers in another bill. However, we've been informed from some stakeholders that removing this standard for students is a lot more complicated than it is for teachers. Therefore, this amendment puts together a working group consisting of various stakeholders ranging from government officials to community members to determine whether or not it is feasible to remove this standard, and if so, how we would go about implementing such a change. The report from that working group is due on December 1st before we reconvene the next year. Your Senate Committee on Education voted 5-0-0, and we ask for the Senate's support.
The question is, shall the Senate refer to the House proposal amendment to further proposal amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and encourage the House proposal amendment to further proposal amendment on S-94.
S-138.
S-138. You're absolutely correct. And it is correct. S138. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would ask that the Senate suspend its rules to take up for action H493, an act relating to capital construction and state bonding, which is pending entry on the notice count.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that pending entry onto the notice calendar, the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up H493 for immediate consideration. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended your rules to take up for immediate consideration H493. H493 has been returned from the House with a proposal of amendment, and the pending question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Essex.
Oh, I was deep in thought. I learned it from my good colleague from Bennington this morning. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. We have indeed reached an agreement with the House, and there was some further proposal of amendments. The proposal of amendments does not change any of the dollars in the bills. It just moved around some dollars, and which we could concur with. One of the things that your institutions committee fought very hard for was, as the senators will remember earlier in the year, we fought really, really hard, along with help from Senate Appropriations, to make sure that we secured match money of $27 million to leverage $320 million worth of federal funds. We had a little bit of a situation like that where we had some clean water funds that wasn't going to be leveraging federal dollars, but they were monies that the towns could apply for and get a 20% towards their project. That started out in FY24 and 25, coming from the governor's recommend of $10 million in each one of those years. And when we started working with this, we got the bill back from the House. The House had taken $6 million away from FY24, leaving it with $4 million and leaving the FY25 with $10 million. The problem was that after they did that, we had town meeting, and a lot of these towns had gone to bond vote, and on the assumption that they were going to get this money from the from the state of Vermont. I think Senator Harrison had reported that part of the section out in the Capitol bill, and I think we had about 20 towns that had been assured that they were going to receive their part of the revolving loan fund, the grant program. So when we saw that the House had even further reduced that amount of money down to $4 million, we were quite concerned, and we brought in the Secretary Julie Moore and asked her one simple question: is $4 million, does that assure these towns that have put these projects forward and made plans to move ahead, is that enough money to make sure that they can do that? And she said no. She said, we're going to have to make a lot of phone calls, and we don't know who's not going to get the money, but there's going to be a lot of unhappy people after we promised it. So we were able to move from FY25 $4 million over there, making FY24 $8 million. And I said, does that fix the problem? And she says, yes, it does. We won't have to make any of those phone calls, so the projects can move forward. We also have other mechanisms that aren't in this bill that to make sure that we can backfill the part of the monies that we took from FY25, so all of these projects can move forward. Out of maybe the 20 projects, and I'm guessing the 20 projects that have been okayed, there's probably another 25 or 30 projects that have yet to go out and have bond votes and all of that. So there's a lot of need for this money. So your Senate Institutions was able to keep that program intact, but other than some small de minimis changes, all the money stays the same. But that was really what we were after. We wanted to make sure that we ensured that those towns that had that bonded for those dollars and planned to move ahead were able to do so. And one last bit about that, we actually brought in 11 communities that were part of that project And they said that monies was the reason why they were able to convince their communities to move forward with. So with that being said, Mr. President, that is what I have to offer today. Thank you.
Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on H 493? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have concurred with the House proposal of amendment on H 493. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've reached the limit of what we can do on this current calendar without a recess. And so I will ask that the Senate stand in recess until 3:45, time certain of 3:45.
Senate will now stand in adjournment until 3:45.